All right, it's time to talk about propositional or persuasive speeches. I use those words interchangeably from time to time. And we see propositional or persuasive speeches all the time. These are those speeches where someone comes in and they tell you that there is a problem and someone or some agency is going to have to solve that problem. According to Dr. Lori Haletta of South Dakota State University, who has written a number of books on public speaking, many speakers do this, and they do this all the time. They indict the system. They tell us what's wrong, but they really don't go any further. They don't help us solve that problem. They just tell us the problem exists. Now, we hear this formally and informally all the time. Editorial writers do it, talk show hosts do it, people speaking at rallies, members of Congress, people you work with, they all will tell you what's wrong. But very seldom do they ever have a working solution on how to solve the problem. So that's what we're going to deal with in the propositional or persuasive speech that we are going to be doing next. Now, this is going to include some different items than what we have had in some of our earlier speeches. One of them is going to be an indictment. We did kind of see it in a couple of our speeches the other day, one on gasoline usage and one on tuberculosis. Some indictments there indicating that we do have some issues or problems that people need to deal with. So all of the speeches this time around will have this same indictment, which is basically going to be a statement of what the problem is. But we're going to take this a step further. Now, with an indictment speech, you have a couple of main points, a couple of sub-points for each main point that are going to tell you what the problem is and how the problem maybe occurred or what is going on, what are the harms that the problem, this issue is causing. For those of you that have those kinds of speeches, all you have to do for your persuasive speech now is to boil down or cut down the information that you had in the original speech. Take the 2 or 3 main points that you had and cut them down to the best 2. And the very best pieces of evidence to support that. And then we go on to the second phase, which is to actually detail a plan of how you think this issue can be dealt with and how it's going to work. And what is the plan? Well, it's a step-by-step analysis of what is to be done, and think of it as the thesis with a narrower focus. Now, for those of you who did not do indictment-type speeches the last time we met, you're having to start from scratch. You're going to have to create a speech that in the first half solves a problem or tells us that there is a problem. You know, like we have potholes in the streets, or there needs to be some changes with the state fairs so that it is more fair to people who are trying to show or present or maybe be a sponsor of the fair system. You know, there are many, many things that you can come up with for issues that you want to take a look at. And you're going to tell us, first of all, in this speech, what is the problem? That's going to be the first half of your speech. What is the problem? And then you, too, will come up with a step-by-step analysis of what has to be done and narrow it down and solve the problem for us. So how do you create a plan? Well, first of all, you want to be completely original, if at all possible. I'm really not looking for you to go out here and find a problem that has already been solved and you do the first half of your speech on what the problem is and in the second half on how someone else has already solved the problem. No, we're looking for you to be creative and show some logical thought and a little bit of research and preparation all rolled into this particular speech. For example, you want to make it illegal for anyone in the U.S. to text while driving. Okay, that's an issue that some are dealing with. Oklahoma has in fact passed some laws that younger people can't text and drive. What about older people? How is this being handled? How would you suggest the state handle the situation? So while formulating your questions as you work through now your problem solving issue, a couple of things you need to think about. Is the plan that you've come up with desirable? Will it get rid of the harms that you think exist? Is it going to avoid new harms, or is it going to cause more problems? You have to think about that as well. You may have a great idea, but maybe it causes other issues for someone else. So that then will not be an effective way of solving the problem. Another thing, is this a practical solution? If we're going to deal with the problem of energy use in this country, and it is certainly a problem, there are many people out there that are making many suggestions, but are they practical? Are they solutions that can be used? Right now, for example, we've been hearing for years about the hydrogen-powered car, but when you really get down to looking at the issue of the hydrogen-powered car, it's too expensive right now, so it is not a practical solution. How is the plan going to be financed? How is it going to be enforced? Have similar plans been used elsewhere? All of those things are usable to help you decide whether or not this is practical. Is the plan better than the alternatives? Another issue to consider. And does your plan resolve the indictments that you bring forward? If you were talking about the issues of tuberculosis and what we've got to do to solve the problem, does your plan answer those questions that you've raised? All of those are essential to formulating a plan that works. And then there are three other essential questions you need to ask. Who's going to enforce this plan? If you are talking about the texting while driving issue, is it going to be the state police? Is it going to be local police officers, sheriffs, and local and city police officers? Or is this going to be something that someone else has to enforce? Are there punishments for those who don't follow the plan? And how is the plan going to be financed or enforced? These are major issues that you want to consider, but they're not the only ones. Are there special interest groups to consider? Let's say you want to make it tougher for older drivers to drive without renewing their license every year or every 2 years or every 5 years. How are you going to convince AARP to go along with that one? Is there any special interest groups to back your plan? Let's say you're talking about cancer. Is this something the Lance Armstrong Foundation would get involved with, or the Susan G. Komen Foundation? If you're talking about gun control, is the NRA going to be involved here? Are they going to support it? Education issues, the National Education Association, and the list goes on and on. Remember, this section, the plan, is what you show how you're going to solve the issue you're discussing. It's not the why it's going to work. It's the how it's going to work. We'll talk about the why in our next lecture that I'll be sending along right after this one.